we need a left back, we need a centre half, we need a midfielder, we need a winger and a striker.
Looking ahead to that Rangers game the 1st of September, the transfer window closes the day before, right? So anyone you bring in deadline day is not going to be able to play that game.
No.
Underneath all that is just incompetence across the board, and we're ignoring all that and just going to the big bad Peter Lawwell again.
Melly, Stephen, here we are back as we embark on our 10th season of doing 20-minute Tims. Flag Day, Celtic, 4-0 Kilmarnock. It's pretty much the ideal way to kick off a new season.
That was true. It sounded like you said 4-0 Kilmarnock there. I was like,
hey.
It was tremendous. Saturday was a wee bonus going into it, meaning Celtic could go a couple of points clear. And you thought this pre-season form was good, so let's see it go right into the start of the season. And that's what Celtic done. Just sort of left off where they kicked off where they left off last season, probably because they get all the same players.
Stephen, see when you watched it, were you thinking, that's a Brendan team?
Yes, that's exactly what it's very familiar as a Brendan team, because it's, funnily enough, as Melly said, it's exactly the same team as we left off last season, except we've swapped out one veteran goalkeeper for another one. We'll get into that, but I do quite like that. I quite like that Celtic are now treating the goalkeeping position a bit like that Sunday afternoon Glastonbury stage thing. It's the legend slot now, the goalkeeping position at Celtic. It's like going to see Diana Ross. Can she still sing? Who cares? Everyone's having a lovely time anyway, and we're having a lovely time with these keepers.
The scouting department get a lot of stick, right? But if Brendan said to them, go find me another Joe Hart, you can't do any better than that.
No, definitely not. No, if anything, he looks maybe even a slight upgrade so far in terms of playing with his feet. So that sounds weird. Playing with his feet, playing football with his feet. No, I don't want to start as often a new season with troubling imagery like that. But yeah, a thoroughly enjoyable return to Celtic Park. It was a brilliant performance. Aye. The one thing I've been saying throughout pre-season is that Celtic have been great. I can't really complain about any of it. We've not really. The one reservation I've had is that we haven't really faced any adversity yet. Everything seems to be going Celtic's way. But I mean, it's a very minor complaint. We've not had a humbling, we've not had a reality check or anything like that, but that's because Celtic aren't really letting it happen. Celtic are playing extremely well. We've been talking about pre-season and whether results matter, whether performances matter. It's the same debate we have basically every season, but I always maintain that performances do matter, because when you watch games such as the Chelsea and Man City ones, you can see that Celtic are not out there just to get fitness. They are practicing what they're about to do to Kilmarnock, and that's exactly how it proves. So we've basically come down from stateside Celts and hit the runway and straight to Celtic Park and carried it straight on.
Look sharp, Melly, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. Like what you said about, is this a Brendan team? That looks like a Brendan team. With a lot of the time last season, the manager's saying stuff and it's not happening on the pitch. So what's happening that this isn't transferring onto the pitch? And then we've seen towards the end of the season when Celtic got that settled team, when we had got all our important players in the team like Carter Vickers, McGregor, Hatate, Kyogo, O'Reilly. When we got everybody back, we went, this is what he's been talking about. This is what's happening. And you were hoping then that this would sort of go into the new season where you see under Rodgers the first time around, he talked about after the Invincible season how Celtic in the second season they were able to move 10 yards up the pitch more, which meant they just absolutely suffocated teams. And I think that's what we're seeing, this sort of extension into this season of, do you know what, that was acceptable last year, but this is how I want things to move on now. And with the Man City and Chelsea games, you're like, yeah, this looks really good against these good teams, but then you worry, see what happens if you go against teams that sit in 10 men behind the ball. That's exactly what Kilmarnock did, and we absolutely pasted them.
Main takeaway, Stephen, one of them for me was a lot quicker on the ball.
Yep.
2-3 touches tops. There's none of this lingering, the horseshoe of death, as people call it. Even players like Liam Scales, who got a lot of stick last season for lingering on the ball, and teams were leaving him on the ball. Credit to Scales, very quick to give the ball to Taylor or McGregor or just pass it. So that was for me one of the main differences I noticed from the Celtic team. A lot more pace in the team, a lot quicker on the ball. Kasper Schmeichel playing out for the back. There was a few times where he confidently just played passes straight into midfield.
Yeah, Both feet as well.
Yeah.
He's very, very comfortable. It looks like he's looking a bit robust these days. Kasper
Husky.
Schmeichel, yeah, husky. Yeah, so hopefully it's just some pre-season. He's been enjoying his holidays. He did say that he didn't hear about the Celtic interest until he was literally on his holidays with his family, and Brendan picked up the phone. So maybe he was just having a right good time in Santa Ponza or wherever
And the
he was.
all-inclusives?
Yeah, but no, it looks as if he's slotted straight in, and the Kilmarnock didn't offer anything in the game at all. But it's a challenge we face all the time in domestic Scottish football. Is a team that's set in with, Melly described it in our At the Match podcast, as too much fear in Scottish football, and they set up to basically just not get gubbed. And it turns out you get gubbed anyway, really. The achievement there is not losing 10-0, even though Celtic don't do that. You know, that's often the accusation, oh, what do you want us to do, 1-10-0? No, but you could just at least try and win the game. But see, in fairness, Celtic were far too good for them. Far too good for them. The approach wasn't great from Kilmarnock, but Celtic were just there to batter them. And it's very, very early days and very, very big words from me. But it's with the pre-season we've seen, which again only matters so much in terms of the results, very little in terms of the results, in fact, but the performances were very impressive. You go into the first game of the season like that, quite reminiscent of, could this be like Ange's second season, where the first season, kind of like that, a lot of challenges, just about got over the line. It was a big tight title race, rolled it into the end, and then the second season just swept everything aside and just romped to a treble. So hopefully that could be reminiscent of that.
You can only take away so much for the first game of the season, Melly, but does Celtic fill you with confidence? Have you got a newfound confidence in this Celtic side that you maybe didn't have rewinding the clock back 12 months?
Yeah, 12 months ago it was everything was up in the air and we were worrying about signings, but we were actually making signings then. Now we're not making signings.
No, it's completely different today. Fast forward 12 months.
Now we're not making signings, but sort of towards the end of the season we got that settled team and we started to see what Brendan was looking for and kept together that kind of minus Adamida. So you're just looking for the progress now. But with what we've seen, the performance, you're going, look, that's really good. But take one or two players out of that, or an injury, a significant injury, it starts to look a wee bit, doesn't look as strong. And that's the problem, was look at what Brendan Rodgers is doing with these players. A few of them were looking for more quality. Imagine what we could do with that quality, and I think that's where the frustration comes in with the transfers. But what he achieved with those players is just sort of rolled into this season, and it's like, just give them a bit more. And what could we see? Because look, Stephen's right. It's always that second season. You always say, look, give managers free transfer windows. It's not really worked like that for Celtic. It's not worked out over the last two transfer windows. But if we have a good one this time, we won't hold my breath. But we could see where we could progress, because Brendan Rodgers is saying all the right things. He's talking about, look, we won a double last season. We're aiming for 3 trophies this year. We missed out on one, but his main thing is he's always focusing on Europe. He's not talking about competing and all that. He's talking about, I want to make those playoffs for the Champions League. So that means you need to finish in a certain position. So he's aiming for 3 or 4 wins in there to probably do that. So I think he's saying all the right things. It's just he's not getting them.
Right, hold on, right. Yeah. Now, look, I know it's our first podcast. I know it's our first podcast back, and you guys have been itching to get in front of the microphones, right? So ask Melly what his takeaways for the game are, and Stephen's talking about, we're going to beat everything, we're going to sweep everything aside. Then we come to Melly, Stephen, and Melly goes, we've not got any players in, and last season was a disgrace, and Brendan wants to win the treble.
Is this our pre-season? Are we working out all the kinks
so
here?
I'm doing my job as podcast manager here. I'm trying to wrangle it back in, because there's a few things specific to the game that I really want to talk about. I want to talk about how good Kyogo was, for talking's sake. I want to talk about how invaluable Matt O'Reilly is, and the fact that as we sit here tonight recording this, there's a talk that Brighton, I want to come and talk to Celtic about signing the guy. I think we need to talk about Liam Scales. We need to talk about Greg Taylor's new haircut. Because Celtic
is that on the agenda? How did that get in there?
Celtic tweeted it, and we need to first of all talk about world-class basics.
Oh, right. Okay.
So what are the chances, right? For those of you that don't know, right, I was kind of out the loop on this. We do another weekly podcast, patreon.com/20minutetims. We do another weekly podcast that's called The Breakfast of Champions. And on The Breakfast of Champions for the past 6 months or more,
probably more, isn't it?
Yeah.
Stephen and Melly have been making jokes about this phrase, world-class basics. Stephen, fill in the listeners about world-class basics.
So establishing the context here so it doesn't look as if we're just slagging Celtic's new decor, new glitter stencils they've got put up in the changing rooms for no reason. World Class Basics came about from the loathsome Jake Humphrey and his very smug and pompous podcast, the High Performance Podcast. And it wasn't directly linked to that. He put a post on LinkedIn.
Of course it was LinkedIn.
Yes, where he talked about his world class basics, and all it really was getting up ridiculously early and drinking water, sitting on the couch. That's all it was. So he got up at 5 a.m. and he posted on LinkedIn saying, I got up at 5 a.m. I rarely sleep past this time and I drink water. And that was it. And he described that as world class basics, and everyone cracked up about it because that's completely ridiculous. Really, all it is him dragging himself off to bed at 8 p.m. the night before so he can get up at 5 a.m., sit there shattered, posting on LinkedIn about water. That's all it is. So, right, anyway, that's the background. And now Celtic have... They have appropriated this and stuck it up on the dressing room wall.
Brendan is very high performance podcast, isn't he? He sort of strikes me as the high performance podcast guy. See when they put that on Twitter, check out our new dressing room, world class basics. I thought, Stephen's going to piss himself when he sees this.
So we've been making not only us. I've heard loads of podcasts making fun of this world class basic stuff because it was unhinged. It was a mental thing to be talking about at 5 a.m. These are world class basics. Just getting out of your bed. Water and vitamins. That was it. So here we are. It's now indelibly linked. It's plastered all over the dressing room in Celtic Park.
And we're going to judge Celtic on the world class basics shortly, like signing footballers. But before we talk about that, we need to talk about the guys that were here. I thought another player that's worth mentioning was Kyogo. He looked super sharp on one of these wee touches and he's off. Wee touch and he's off, spinning away, clattered by the keeper, taken out for what should have been a definite pen. Really sceptical about the earlier offside call as well. I'm not too sure how that looked even after seeing the VAR graphic, but I was really, really impressed by Kyogo, which is good. He's our only striker.
Yeah, that's ideal, isn't it? Our only striker's playing very well in the first game of the season, but all he's missing was a goal, but a few good chances there. There was that one, sort of one touch we worked down the left-hand side and the cross came in. It just wouldn't sit for him and he sort of caught it in the half volley, but it was more we seen it in the first game of the last season, was at Ross County, where Kyogo was dropping deep and we thought, do you know what, maybe under Brendan his role will change a bit, but in this game, it was the same. He was dropping deep, but it was that sort of stuff we've seen in pre-season. And this is why we probably find that pre-season is so crucial, because this is what Celtic have worked on. So he's dropping in, popping off one touch, it goes out wide, and then he's in the box. And it happens so many times because a defender can't go all the way with him and then leave the space in behind. So they find it difficult. And his link-up play was great. He looked sharp as anything. A few good turns, and that one touch where he dragged it in and then the defender committed, he lifts it over the keeper, he gets a slight touch on it. So all that was missing in his game was a goal, but his all-round play was amazing. And you maybe think, he's 30 this season, is this sort of the decline? But judging by that, not a chance.
You worried about this change of agent that he recently had? Melly touches on the fact that Kyogo's 30. I think to myself, he's probably got one big move in him. If Kyogo's going to make another move, it's probably going to be in this summer. But part of me is thinking too bad, because Kyogo's so good and so vital for us. Even if we had even if you bring Adam Ida in, you still need Kyogo on the side, Stephen. And he showed us in the glimpses of that game what he is when he's at his absolute best. Although Melly says he didn't get a goal, he was ferocious. Throughout the game, and you think we just simply can't lose this. There's a couple of players in this Celtic team that we can't afford to lose all in the same summer. Circumstance dictates that you can't afford to lose Matt O'Reilly, Hatate and Kyogo in the same summer. So if it is O'Reilly going, then Kyogo, you might have changed the agent, but you're not changing club.
Yeah, I'm generally quite realistic when it comes to these things. I'm quite understanding usually of players who have put in a right good shift, who have achieved quite a lot at Celtic and just feel like they want a new challenge. I'm generally fine with that, but you have to draw a line at some point, and we discussed it in general Patreon properties of ours over the summer when we were going live and talking about how, like Matt O'Reilly, we've all come to terms with the fact that he might go, but we're reading reports of 14.3 million added or bids with add-ons, I should say, rather. And I'm just like, well, if that's the case, then he can't go. It's nothing to do with anyone else's ambitions to go and play in the Champions League or in Italy or whatever. He simply can't put up with that. And if Celtic have ludicrously one striker at the moment, and it's Kyogo, we can't entertain any thoughts of him going. If you weren't aware of that, of course, you've just referenced the fact that he changed agents, and the agency announced this with a highlights package, made a big thing of the fact they'd signed Kyogo. There are a few reasons you would change agency. The main one, the very, very obvious one, is that you're looking for someone to get you into different, who's got connections in different leagues who could maybe set up a move for you. That's the main one. But there are other ones that would maybe just be commercial rather than in terms of moving. You could be setting up with an agency that have got connections with different advertisers, with different brand deals and all that. That I'm being fairly optimistic when I say that, because
you're trying your best for me, but I'm shitting myself.
Yeah. It's what my main point is. I don't know anything other than what's been announced that he has changed agency, but there are other reasons than you're looking for a move. So I hope we can all console ourselves with that until there's any further news on it. But that said, it doesn't matter who's in for him. It doesn't matter how much is offered for him, because realistically, any value placed on Kyogo now at 30. And if he's maybe got one more move, it's not going to be enough for Celtic to part with him. But I mean, what is he honestly going to be worth in the open market? 12 or 14 million or something like that at this age? No.
Yeah.
Keep Kyogo. I'm not interested in it. We can count the money as we're finishing second in the league and getting humiliated in the Champions League if we're selling O'Reilly and Hatate and Kyogo all in the one window.
It's O'Reilly and Kyogo. They're a great partnership as well, and I couldn't think of losing that this season. But I think really we need to face facts that there's so much smoke around the Matt O'Reilly transfer thing that he's pretty much going to go, and the worry comes, we'll talk about Celtic's incomes in a minute, but the worry comes at the back end of that. If you're losing Matt O'Reilly, we need to get somebody in to replace him. But I think the writing's on the wall a bit with the O'Reilly thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it has for a long time, and you kind of hope...
And it's world-class basics.
Yeah.
you kind of hope during the summer that this would have been sorted out by now, so you're not... It's always it's no harder, but it's just that when you start a season with a player, you kind of think, you want him to stay in. Because we have those sort of 4 weeks between the season starting and the window shutting. We've seen it numerous times. Like, you forget that Edward played alongside Kyogo in a couple of games at the start of the season. But with Matt O'Reilly, it's one of those ones. He is irreplaceable, right? So you're not going to get MD near as good as him. He's one of the best midfielders I've seen at Celtic. But with him, it feels that inevitable stage that he's going to go. But I kind of...
What have you made of the links? The Atalanta, there's been Southampton, today it's Brighton. Chelsea, there's whispers about Chelsea. Who's the boy that moved from Chelsea that went to Atletico Madrid?
Conor Gallagher, yeah.
And they're saying that they might look at Matt O'Reilly to replace him going into Chelsea. That, to me, I love Matt O'Reilly and I think he's brilliant. I don't think he needs to make that intermediate move. I think he can go directly into a top club like Atletico Madrid in January or Chelsea this summer.
But are you saying Chelsea are a top club still or not?
Well, I think they're more of a top club than, say, Brighton or Southampton.
Well, they definitely are in stature and all that and money, but I just don't know if that's a good move from him. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, Matt O'Reilly's thinking this or thinking that, but from all accounts, it seems like he's not pushing for a move. He will take a move if it suits him. And you look at Chelsea and go, does that suit a guy like Matt O'Reilly? I know there's certain players you can go, oh, he's heading off for the money, he wants to play for a big club. But
for people that might not know, why do you think that wouldn't suit Matt O'Reilly a move to Chelsea?
They're a basket case. They don't seem to have a strategy at all. And if Matt O'Reilly's going there, might be different under Maresca. He might have a plan for Matt O'Reilly, but how long will Maresca be there? How many managers have Chelsea been through? So we've seen so many players who are up and coming or good players go to Chelsea and they just fall by the wayside because there's no long-term plan for them other than we need to spend some money right now and get in players. Like, they've got Caicedo in midfield, they've got Enzo Fernandez in there. There's Matt O'Reilly.
Lavia as well. They've just signed Dewsbury Hall from Leicester, who's about the same age as him. I think it'd be a terrible move to go to Chelsea, to be honest.
Have done a really good job, so now do Brighton. Tell them why you shouldn't go to Brighton.
Well, Brighton's a bit different, is that who's their manager now after he left? But I think that more suits because of the way they play. But again, I'm looking at it going, could you be aiming higher?
Yeah.
So I'm just not sure the right move might come along. And it's not as if Celtic need to sell now because Matt O'Reilly's only got a year left in his deal. Him, Kyogo as well, have got a long time left in their deal. And I would be surprised if he stayed, but also at the end, if he stayed, you'd be like, you know what, maybe just the right move didn't come along. It's not about being at Celtic, it's just the right move didn't come along. And I don't think Matt O'Reilly's performance will change at all between that.
No, I totally agree with that. It's all very well saying aim higher, but if those clubs don't want him right now, then that it's not a possibility. It's not an option for him. He can't just choose to go to Atletico Madrid because they've just signed a midfielder. They've been, I think, at the same time as they were linked to O'Reilly, they signed another younger midfielder at that point as well. So things move quite quickly. The same clubs that were in for him at one window might not be the same ones that come in from a different window. You've got other clubs in England who might probably fancy a little bit of Matt O'Reilly. Why wouldn't you, after all? But there's a lot of financial, a lot of financial difficulties for teams there. They've all got a lot of money, but they're not allowed to spend it necessarily at the moment. So it might just be that, well, good for us, to be honest, if these clubs come along, can't afford Matt O'Reilly, or if you're Atalanta and you're just trying your luck with
those bids
derisory
were weird,
bids.
weren't they? Yeah, they were derisory.
Yeah,
really.
so just reject them. And Brendan Rodgers has said that. Brendan Rodgers has said, we're relaxed about it just now. There's a lot of buzz around him. There's, he's not coming out. He's not patronising us by telling him, oh no, there's nothing happening. He's a Celtic player and he's not going anywhere. He's not patronising us by saying that, because we all know that there's a possibility of him leaving. But what he is saying is that, yeah, there are bids coming in, but they're nowhere near our valuation. So
what did he
he
say?
stays put.
Value the player, not the league.
Yeah, that's
how
right.
Brendan
That's right.
put it.
Yeah, I think the game as well on Sunday just showed you that you kind of make your peace and go, do you know what, he's going to go. And then when you see him play football, you're like, oh no,
well,
please,
that's
man.
you kind of want them to go before you see them play.
Yeah.
Because that midfield three of him, Hatate, McGregor against the SPFL fodder is absolutely sensational. They can't live with it. The way they pick up space, the way Hatate and O'Reilly would move out wide and players would go inside. The sort of O'Reilly goes out in that right-hand side and forms that triangle with the right back and the right winger, and with Kuhn playing well, it actually looked good. And then the other side, Hatate was more going out beside Greg Taylor and Forrest, and you just think, oh, that midfield could be really good. I'd love to see them get a proper crack at the Champions League, because Hatate missed a lot of the games, didn't he, in the season before Matt O'Reilly had to move into the sort of deeper role. So I'd love to see them go at it again. And we've seen O'Reilly with the goals against Atletico Madrid and those touches into Kyogo, but it's just that bounce pass he does, the way he finds space.
The wee loophole, the free kick over the top
Who
for
else
Kyogo.
sees that, and he can just do it. So good. But after the Kuhn goal, I thought, with that celebration, sell them, actually, get them out.
Were you sick of the pre-rehearsed celebrations? Palmer's got a few of those in his locker.
Woke rubbish, these celebrations, aren't they?
But the three of them in midfield just sort of picked up where they left off last season, and you thought this could be a really good midfield three. And then we've got Bernardo back complementing that if something goes wrong. But if Matt O'Reilly goes, you kind of need to bring in two players to replace him in that midfield probably, and then make the rest of the team better. But that ain't happening.
Right, so let's talk about it. I mean, the thing that's been getting on everybody's tits on all summer has been...
What a run up that was.
I was trying to find something else to say, but you just can't replace them. The problem was, we're basically not signed anybody, Stephen. And
No.
I know Brenda's trying to temper it all down, right? But we can do maths. And we all the fans remember Brendan Rodgers saying last season, well, I needed 4 players in, and that was before I lost any. So people start thinking, okay, the squad isn't great. We watched the squad, it wasn't great. We watched the players, they're not great. We saw one of the sort of toughest league run-ins that was totally unnecessary last season. So we think, okay, big summer coming up, an opportunity here to really press on. Plenty of money in the bank. Ambitious manager here for a long time. He's not going anywhere. A core squad there that we can build on. Good players on long contracts. Flick the switch. Flick the transfer switch and get players in.
Turn that fax machine on.
Turn the fax machine on. And we're just not seeing it. Now, we brought in Bernardo. Fine. But
maintenance, isn't it?
It's maintenance. And we brought in Schmeichel, okay, and we brought in Sinisalo, and that was good recruitment, bringing in the young guy and the experienced guy, and hopefully they can, get some shared minutes. But really, with Schmeichel and goal and Bernardo on the bench, you're not even reached where you were last season when you had Ida in the team, and last season's team wasn't good. And I think the problem is the Celtic board. There's something wrong with the recruitment at Celtic. It takes far too long, too long. And I think part of the problem is when Brendan said the board need to be braver. I need to convince the board to be braver. I think there's a mentality within Celtic where they would rather take £6 million and buy 3 £2 million players and have them eventually flop over the course of 2 years than buy a £6 million flop. The problem is you can't get really much for £2 million now.
No.
And I think that's part of the problem. But another problem the Celtic board have got is we're working in different timelines here. See, when we all turn up for Flag Day, That's Christmas Day for Celtic fans. We want to see the new toys. But what the board have done is they've wrapped last year's Christmas presents and said, we'll pick you up new stuff in the January sales next month. And you think, that's not what we're here for.
No.
No. The season starts on Flag Day, and Brendan Rodgers and the whole footballing world want the players in for the season kicking off. Not all the players, but you want your main signings in. And they just seem, Stephen, unable to get this transfer thing right now. Ida, it's obviously going to happen. It's just a question of money. Wolves obviously want money way up here. Norwich rather. Celtic are obviously trying to pay money down way here, and Ida's sort of...
We're Matt O'Reilly in them.
Yeah, well, we are Matt O'Reilly in them with low bids, and Ida's kind of been a bit difficult to work with in order to push things on. And do you know what? Someone doing that for a move to Celtic, I'm very happy.
Stinking attitude rat.
Yeah.
Turn their back on him.
Yeah, perfect. Absolutely ideal. You want to come to Celtic, do all that. But the broader transfer thing, fans are just clueless. We sacked our head of recruitment. We sacked Mark Lowell. We don't know who's running what and where and why, and it's just a very frustrating experience for the fans.
I think that's the right word. I think, no, I can't speak for everyone. I'm not panicking about it, but I do admit that I turned up to Flag Day and was very disappointed with the lineup given. Now, again, brilliant performance, smashed Kilmarnock aside. But again, I think you can do both. I think you can appreciate that. I think you can be confident of Celtic being able to deliver the goods domestically. And I've already said that hopefully it can be like Angie's season. We can just romp to a treble, hopefully, as we sit here on basically day one. But I think we're also capable of holding two views in that, yes, this is brilliant, but we always talk about this having a crack at the Champions League thing, right? Whatever that means, we've not prepared for it at all, and it's just around the corner. And I appreciate that there are still weeks to go in the transfer window, but it's the same stuff. You have to add up all the evidence and come to what ultimately is a bit of a failure so far. Not an ultimate failure, but so far it is a failure. Brendan Rodgers talking repeatedly about wanting quality, stretching back months now, right? And Ida comes in, gets the double over the line, brilliant, but he's away now, and we're playing, regardless of what happens there, it seems inevitable, but we are currently playing without him, and might be playing without him for another 3 or 4 games or whatever it is. O is gone as well, so even the guy who Ida came in and shunted out of the team, they're both gone. So we've got Kyogo, we've got guys like Forrest starting games, who is excellent against Kilmarnock, brilliant again, but going forward, we need to do better with the squad management.
So how much of the Forrest thing do you think was reputation, right? Because I was thinking this when I watched Forrest. I thought, if he had any other name in the back of the jersey, and to be honest, it could be any name because you can't make out the name on the back of the jersey now because it's written in black and it's on green. World-class basics. I thought to myself, if that was a guy we just signed in the summer and he put in that performance, I'd be pleased with it. You'd think he's a decent player, and I just wonder how much of the Forrest thing is reputation, but also how much of it is he's what, a 31-year-old, 33 rather, year old winger.
You don't get them.
You don't get many of those.
No, that's all it is. That's all it is, and the situation hasn't changed with Forrest, except that he is now older as well. When we were last talking about it, again, I love what he's doing at the moment and what he did at the end of last season, but we need to strengthen, and we just fundamentally haven't done that at all in any meaningful way.
It's kind of inexcusable, isn't it?
I mean, Kasper Schmeichel is a good start, but all he has done is basically replaced another veteran, very experienced, winning mentality, leader, potential, all these things. We're basically taking one out and replaced him with another who's almost exactly the same age as him. But it looks like a good signing so far. But that's it. That's all the last 3 months, and even stretching back to February when the work should have been getting put in for this transfer window. Stretching back months now, all the strategy has amounted to is signing Bernardo permanently, signing Kasper Schmeichel to replace Joe Hart, which took ages. Again, we've played without him now. So, and Ida is all he is a player who was there last season. We're playing without him now. That's all there is now. So, as a result of, I don't want to start identifying individual players because I want them out of the team. That's not my point here. But as we sit here, Greg Taylor is the only left back at the club. A couple of younger guys who played in pre-season, but I don't know what the plan is with them. Who knows? They could end out on loan again, but they weren't. Anderson wasn't in the squad at the weekend there, so there's no point in talking about it. We only have one senior left back. Liam Scales is currently the only option at left centre back as well. Again, brilliant, played well, scored a great goal, but he is literally the only option. Kyogo is the only striker. Stephen Welsh is the only defender, backing up the two that played basically all of last season that is trusted, because Nawrocki's injured again and Lagerbielke's gone. Kobayashi's gone. Those guys played in pre-season and are now gone. So we are paper thin in terms of the quality there. And Brendan Rodgers not only speaks about quality for months on end, he also talks about getting them in early. I don't know whether that's just management speak and just something we can basically dismiss from now on because it doesn't happen. But at the same time, it is out there. It is something the fans digest. We want them for the USA tour. We want them as early as possible to bed them in and to prepare them for the season. None of these things happen.
But I just wonder how transfers happen at Celtic, because historically Celtic have always sort of laboured these transfer things. They've always, they're either, you know, really, really protracted, or not everyone's a flop that we sign, but we sign masses of flops, like like that last window or whatever it is we were talking about with home and all this sort of stuff. You think, how do these guys like Lagerbielke written off within weeks? Nawrocki either can't get fit or is just another write-off. Maybe we're being too generous to say the guys can't get fit. Kwon, Yang, maybe Yang's got something in him. Home, Yang and Home. You could argue that potentially the manager sees something in these guys because they play from time to time, but that's about it. But this summer, it was supposed to be all different. It was supposed to be about getting 4 or 5 bits of quality. We've got enough bodies around the place. We need to get the quality in. And it's just, I know you can't really read too much into links in the paper. In fact, as far as I understand it, if Celtic are linked to, if you took all the players Celtic were linked to in the last, say, 12 months, probably in the news, probably only one of them Celtic were even interested in. That's how quiet Celtic are about the business. So taking that rule, Melly, even the lack of rumours, that we're hardly linked to anybody in the paper. So you think to yourself, are we just not making contact with clubs? An agent not trying to get guys moves? Or is Brendan saying, get me a left back, and then someone turns up with 3 left backs, and then he goes, okay, I'll get me left back number 1, and then the board take 3 weeks to put the offer in, and
even Hugo Bueno is the latest one as well. And we get told to bolt for him the last time we approached him. So it's just is there anything to be said for Hugo Bueno again? I mean, it might happen, but it's just, I don't know why. If we were not back for him the previous time, surely that would have been part of the negotiation at the time. Any chance of maybe chasing this up when it comes summer?
The left back situation, apparently, the rumour is that we want to bring back Kieran Tierney. But you hear all this conflicting stuff. You want to bring back Kieran Tierney, but he's injured. So we need someone to tide us over. So we were going to try and get Bueno in to tide us over to January. Allegedly, Liverpool are interested in the current Wolves left back. So Wolves are saying, well, until we see what's happening with him, we kind of let number 2 go. And Celtic are off trying to find an alternative. But you're like to yourself, well, but move on then. There's more. You don't just sit about waiting for Liverpool to decide what's happening with Wolves to decide what's happening to their left back, because we need a guy. And what's the difference between Hugo Bueno and the guy next on your list? Because if it's massive, then that tells me the scouts aren't doing a particularly good job. Because if they can only find one good player and no one else is worth considering, you think to yourself, well, what are we doing here in a world of footballers?
Yeah, and I think the main problem is well, we thought we get rid of the problem, didn't we? We get rid of the chief scout and we get rid of Mark Law, and we thought
particularly buy into that myself.
But we thought, right, okay, they're leaving, so they will get replaced. Yet we are. What was that, in March, maybe? Maybe a bit earlier, a wee bit later, but we're now into August and we don't know who's doing the recruitment, who's looking for players, who's bringing in players. And is there any wonder why we're sitting in August going, here, we've not signed MD? It's because there's nobody there to sign MD. I don't know how it works anymore.
I think, to be fair, the way it works with Celtic is they've got like a head of scouting operations. I can't remember the guy's name.
Tosh McKinley.
No, but he is a scout. But that guy, the head of scouting operations, he's been there since Ange's first season, maybe 2021. So you could say, if you were being pragmatic, you could say, well, if you did like a process of elimination, right? We've changed him. You're working your way up the tree, and you go,
there's no many left.
There's no many. It's like a game of Guess Who. Bump, and you left the guy with the big nose and the glasses. You're to blame.
Yeah, and I think if we had sat in the last podcast of the season and went, right, Celtic are going to start the first game of the season, what do we need in and what do you expect in? The minuscule benefit of the doubt that I was willing to give the board, the recruitment team, there is no way I'd have came back and said to you, we will just have brought in a goalkeeper and Bernardo. Sinisalo, fair enough, but there's no way I would have said, nah, we'll have more than that. No way are we leaving. And these are non-negotiables for me. We need a left back, we need a centre half, we need a midfielder, we need a winger and a striker.
Well, Brendan wants 2 strikers. He's
Yeah.
already on the record saying he wants to. So we need minimum 5 players in.
Yeah, and we've seen in previous seasons when it gets to this point, you don't go out and get 5 first-team ready players in 4 weeks. It's not going to happen. So what we're into now is that inevitable, maybe we can leave out that position and get that. And you're like, why are we doing this? Why does this happen all the time? Because we've seen last season, if we just take that as an example, we're waiting. Mind we signed Jota on deadline day. We'll bring in the quality right on deadline day. We brought in Lewis Palmer, who is not the answer. So we weren't waiting for everything to fall into place. It didn't happen.
It was a him or nobody else.
Yeah,
Palmer looks like him or nothing sign. I think I mean, people are not necessarily cracking up just now, Stephen. But if the board don't do the business, they are going to now. You can point the finger at the board, and people will say, "Well, it's not actually the board's fault. We let the football guys get on with the football stuff." But ultimately, someone has to carry the can for it. Someone, and if they fail to back the man, like see Brendan Rodgers, who, by all accounts, what did he say? I want to be here until I'm shelled out or something, until I'm sacked. Remember he said words to that effect, emptied. So by all accounts, he wants to be here for a long time. But see if he goes at the end of the season because of this transfer nonsense. You want a head on a platter. You want somebody to stand down and, people...
Don't test him again. Don't test this, because it's like we sit back and wait and hope that these managers perform miracles and just run everything. Brendan Rodgers, just improve every day, and meanwhile everything's just shambling around about them. And I'm glad that you've both said that, or something similar, approaching the non-negotiable thing with the transfers, right? Because I think that's important to say, because you can find any opinion you want out there. You can find people who say, "Oh, imagine wanting signings. We've won a double last season. We'll be absolutely fine. We'll romp to get more success. We'll skint SCAPEGOAT," all that stuff. You can find that, and you can find it all the way down to like outright, right? Just nothing's ever good enough, and just outright negativity.
I'm not sitting here, by the way, saying bet you don't get 5 players in.
Yeah.
There's plenty of time to do it, and Celtic could still manage to do it. But I'm asking, is this the right way to do it?
Yeah, that's it. So again, so that end of the spectrum is obviously the toxic negative energy that Brendan Rodgers spoke of as well. But I think there's a lot of people in the middle who just think, come on, can we not just do this right for once? We'll get everything. I mean, like, all the things you listed as well, everything's set, everything's there for Celtic to kick on and be a proper, like, well-run team, and they just pass up opportunity after opportunity every single time. So,
and we're only going to previous history. That's why we feel
exactly 100% on that. It's a good point. And the non-negotiable nature of these things is, this isn't sitting here. This isn't bedwetting. This isn't entitlement. This isn't, imagine wanting just to spend for the sake of it. Imagine wanting to bring players in. This is, we desperately need these players. Like, you cannot negotiate a season with one left back, 3 options at centre half, one of which is Stephen Welsh, who always gets injured. It's not possible.
Carter Vickers injured a lot.
Yeah,
as well.
Carter Vickers, he's got his histories.
Like Kyogo, say he takes a dunt and he's out of the game, right? We've got a Rangers game in the 1st of September, right? So, looking ahead to that Rangers game the 1st of September, the transfer window closes the day before, right? So anyone you bring in deadline day is not going to be able to play that game.
No.
There's no point continuing them for that game.
International break, and then the Champions League starts. So you could be bringing in 5 players on deadline day, which we won't. And then you've got one league game in a couple of weeks, and then you've got a Champions League game.
But you might bring the guys in a deadline day, right? They're not going to feature in these important games of Champions League like that. Then rewind the clock back a week. So anyone that's brought in the last week of the window is pretty much going to be useless for the opening Rangers game and the Champions League games. But we've only got one striker, one left back. So if either of these positions gets injured, do you think to yourself, we're really running against the clock? And to me, there seems to be no need to do it. And everyone's looking for people to blame, and theories are out there in our Discord. There's people, it's this guy, it's that guy, pulling people's LinkedIn's going, looking at his job description, he seems to be in charge of CVs, Celtic, and he seems to be in charge of scouting, and people are blaming Michael Nicholson. People are blaming Peter Lawwell, which honestly, I think that's... I know what you get called, right, when you're seen to be perhaps correcting the record, right, on the Peter Lawwell thing. As far as I'm concerned, that sounds to me like a waste of time. You're blaming a bad guy for 3 years ago. Or whatever.
This is what happens when you bring him back.
But that's it. I just think, I wish we could just laser focus and find someone new to blame, someone more up to date and more current.
It's a lightning rod, isn't it?
If it weren't to go right, that is.
While he sits there taking all the slings and arrows of all this, underneath all that is just incompetence across the board, and we're ignoring all that and just going to the big bad Peter Lawwell again, who's probably get very, very... I know people don't want to hear that, but he's got very little to do with the day-to-day running of the club. Certainly not transfers. He's certainly not sitting there with a big leash around the war chest, a leash around the war chest, but you know what I mean? Like, just sit, no, we're not signing anyone.
I suppose if you're the new chief executive, you might be sitting there going, can he win? They hated him because he was in front of a microphone every 2 weeks. I sit back and just do my job as a chief exec. Now everyone's saying, where's the chief executive? We want to hear from him. He's like, you can't win.
Aye, but if he was sitting back and players were coming in and you go, right, oh, fair enough, he's doing that. You don't want to hear from a chief executive, probably just like a good referee, you don't really see or hear from him. It just does his job and go. But with Celtic, it's not... I don't think it's going to get to this window and we're going to go, see, what were you worried about? There's 5 players in, it wasn't a bother, because the history shows that doesn't happen. And when have we ever brought in this amount of players in this short space of time and it's all just fell into place? It doesn't happen. It's all going to... Even January, we were screaming out for a striker. Adamida comes in, brilliant. But it was a phone call a couple of days before. Kasper Schmeichel comes in, brilliant, looks great. It was a phone call from Brendan Rodgers after the Euros finished. So Joe Hart tells us in February, his words, February or whatever it was, I'm giving Celtic as much time as I can to prepare. And we end up with a guy older than him who's played under the manager before. So while I like the signing and he looks good, the working behind it that is non-existent.
Well, if I was going to play devil's advocate, and I do enjoy doing that, and I will do it just to wrap up this episode, I'll play devil's advocate. What if the scouts went out and got a list of 5 goalkeepers or 3 or 4 goalkeepers to fill the position, meeting the criteria that Brendan wanted, and number 1 was Kasper Schmeichel. He fits all your criteria, and number 2 was Sinisalo, and Brendan went, well, do you know what? I'll give Kasper a smoke phone. And Brendan, that to me, that's all right. He goes, I'll wait till after the Euros. Once all that's out of the way, I'll give him a phone when I know he's on his holidays or when the season's done. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that. That comment, I think, got a lot of people rubbed up the wrong way. Oh, Brendan phoned me last week on my holidays. You're not going to phone him during the Euros. You're not going to contact a player during the Euros. You might not even contact his agent. You might give him a phone and say, listen, do you fancy a shot at Celtic? Meanwhile, everyone else is pulling together the Sinisalo deal. So, and people bristled a wee bit at that, but just because Brendan made the contact with a player that he worked with before doesn't necessarily... I mean, would it be weird if some other random guy got in touch with Kasper Schmeichel's agent and he's like, Brendan, I speak to Brendan every other week. The guy's got my number. Why didn't he just phone me?
So that's fine in isolation. But this isn't in isolation because Celtic ended up with Adamida. Why? Because Brendan Rodgers said, I liked that guy before and I got him. So while you're saying the scouts are coming with Kasper Schmeichel, they didn't come with Adamida. They might have come with Kasper Schmeichel and see if they've got a list of 5 and he's the top. Right, where's your list of 5 left-backs? Where's your list of 5 centre-halves? Where's your list of 5 wingers? Where's your list of 5 central midfielders? And where's your list of 5 strikers? And we can go and get them. But the reason that I bristle so much at that is because where's the plan in here? Because the last striker you brought in, Brendan Rodgers said, I wanted to be informed of him. This goalkeeper, I worked with him before. And there's 5 or 6 other positions that haven't been filled. Yet we are getting rammed down our throats now. The CEO is coming out and saying we want to be world class in everything we do. We've got the live, laugh, love of the football world stenciled up in our changing room. Yet
season tickets are very expensive. Plenty of money in the bank.
So Celtic again, and it is annoying. You're going to the stadium. You're looking forward to Flag Day. You walk into the stadium and not a lick of paint. Nothing's changed. So the money's not going there. The money's coming in because Celtic put out tickets are going on sale for this game. When was the last time you could rock up to Celtic Park on the day and buy a ticket? You can't. It's sold out in advance. Celtic sell out every game. Season tickets are sold out instantly. Strips are going off the rails. Yet, what are we seeing for that? What are we seeing?
That's it. They ruined Christmas Day.
And even best case scenario, a brilliant bit of scouting. If we were to give them the benefit of the doubt, what a great bit of scouting, signing one of the world's most high profile, out of contract veteran goalkeepers in Kasper Schmeichel, one of the most famous footballers in the world, probably. Brilliant bit of recruitment there.
Listen, there probably are lists, and for all we know, they might just be sitting in somebody's desk drawer or whatever under piles of other newspapers and other stuff. And
along with all the CVs for that time before Neil Lennon got the job.
Along for all the CVs and Gordon Strachan's. Remember Gordon Strachan conducted the review into the youth setup. All that. It's all sitting in a desk somewhere. And and Peter Lawwell those dossier into dodgy refs from a decade ago. It's all just sitting in someone's filing cabinet somewhere. It's going to be a really busy few weeks coming up. Join us here. Subscribe if you watch us on YouTube. Subscribe if you listen on your podcast. If you want to support the podcast and get extra content, patreon.com/20minutetims is where you can do that. There'll be more on that in the future. We got right into the podcast this week. But most of all, thank you for watching and listening, and we'll see you next week.